cold on planet Kryos didn't just bite, it consumed. It found the gaps in Elias Thorne's shattered armor and turned his blood to slush. He wasn't running anymore. You don't run with a shrapnel wound the size of a dinner plate in your thigh. You crawl, you drag, you die. Elias was a Terran combat medic, trained to fix broken things, but he couldn't fix this. His squad had pulled out hours ago, the evac ship a distant roar that had faded into the howling wind. He had stayed behind to stabilize a local, a kid caught in the crossfire of the Vanguard mining drills. That choice had cost him his seat. Now, gravity took over. The ice shelf beneath him groaned and gave way. He fell into the dark. The impact should have killed him. Instead, he landed on soft, wet moss in a subterranean cavern. The air here was still, heavy with a metallic scent. In the center, illuminated by bioluminescent fungi, was a pool of thick amber liquid. It wasn't water. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Elias tried to move, but his leg was a ruin of torn flesh and freezing blood. His vision tunneled. Instinct took over. The primal reptilian need to drink. He dragged his body to the edge, cupping the amber sludge in shaking hands. He drank. It tasted like copper and ozone. It burned going down, a liquid fire that raced through his veins. He gasped, his back arching as his cells screamed. He looked down at his leg. The wound wasn't knitting together magically. It was boiling shut. Steam rose from his flesh as the skin fused, leaving a raised, ugly silver scar. The pain vanished, replaced by a terrifying electric energy. "You have stolen from the deep," a voice rasped from the shadows. It wasn't angry, it was disappointed. Elias scrambled back, reaching for a sidearm he had lost miles ago. A figure stepped into the light. She was towering, 7 feet of pale, scarred muscle and iridescent scales. A mane of sharp, silver quills rattled on her back. This was Kaelen. She didn't hold a gun. She held a spear tipped with volcanic glass, leveled at his throat. I was dying," Elias choked out, his voice raw. "And now you are a thief," Kaelen said, her voice like grinding stones. "The nectar gives life, Terran, but it demands a life in return. You have taken a debt you cannot pay." She pressed the spear tip against his chest, right over his beating heart. "Hook. Walk," she commanded. "The matriarch will decide if you bleed out now, or if we feed you to the mountain piece by piece." They walked for hours through crushing silence. Elias wasn't a guest, he was livestock. Kaelen kept the spear at his back, prodding him whenever he slowed. They emerged into the geode, a massive hollow inside the glacier where the frostkin lived. It wasn't a city, it was a refugee camp. The air smelled of stale sweat, unwashed bodies, and rotting fungus. As they passed, the villagers didn't look at Elias with curiosity. They looked at him with hate. A mother pulled her child close, shielding the kid's eyes. An old warrior spat a glob of blue saliva at Elias's boots. "Why?" Elias whispered. "I saved one of your kids up top." "You drank the source?" Kaelen answered, not looking at him. "That pool is finite. Every drop you drank is a drop that could have saved a dying elder or a wounded hunter. You didn't just save yourself, Terran. You stole a future." They reached the matriarch's dwelling. The elder lay on a pile of furs, her breath rattling in her chest. Her skin was grey, flaky, with the fungal rot that plagued the colony. "This is the thief?" The matriarch wheezed. "He drank, Mother," Kaelen said, bowing her head. "He is debt-bound." "Kill him," the matriarch said. It wasn't a scream, it was a tired, practical order. "Return his water to the earth." Elias stiffened. "I can help you." The room went silent. Kaelen looked at him with disdain. "You have nothing we want." "I see the rot on your skin," Elias said, his medic training kicking in despite the fear. "I see the way your warriors are favoring their joints. I don't have magic water, but I have antibiotics. I have knowledge." "Words," Kaelen scoffed. She raised her spear. "Look at your arm," Elias shouted, pointing at Kaelen's left bicep. A rag was tied around it, soaked in dark violet blood. "You're hurt, and you haven't drunk from the pool. Why? Because you're saving it for her?" He pointed at the matriarch. "I can fix your arm. Without the nectar. Without a debt." The matriarch raised a trembling hand. "Let him try on the guardian. If she dies, he dies slowly." Kaelen hesitated, then ripped the rag away. The wound was deep, infected, smelling of gangrene. She glared at Elias, her eyes solid violet pools of distrust. "Touch me, and I will break your wrist," she warned. Elias opened his depleted medkit. He had one shot. If his human medicine failed on alien biology, he was dead. He uncapped the antiseptic. "This is going to hurt," he muttered. Kaelen didn't blink. "Pain is life," she replied. "It didn't happen overnight. Trust is a resource scarcer than heat on Kryos." For 3 days, Elias lived in a cage of ice bars at the edge of the camp. He wasn't part of the tribe. He was a tool they were afraid to break. Every morning, Kaelen came to the bars. She didn't speak. She just extended her arm through the gap. Elias cleaned the wound, applied fresh sealant, and injected broad-spectrum antibiotics. There was no banter, no flirting, just the grit of survival. On the 4th day, the infection broke. The swelling went down. Kaelen stared at the clean pink scar forming where rotting flesh had been. She looked at Elias, really looked at him, for the first time. There was no gratitude in her eyes, only confusion. "It cost nothing," she whispered, flexing her hand. "No blood was paid." "That's how it's supposed to work," Elias said, leaning back against the cold stone, exhausted. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. He tossed the empty antibiotic vial aside. "We help each other. Nobody has to die." Kaelen unlocked the cage. She didn't offer freedom, she offered work. "If you eat, you labor," she said, tossing a heavy sack of thermal moss at his feet. "Move this to the lower vents." This was the test. Elias grabbed the sack. On Earth, it would have weighed 50 pounds. Here, in the heavy gravity of the cavern, it felt like 200. He gritted his teeth and heaved. His knees buckled. He slipped on the ice, the sack crashing down, spilling precious moss. Laughter erupted from the nearby frostkin. They jeered, pointing at the weak, soft-skinned alien. Elias's face burned with shame. He tried to lift it again, his muscles screaming, but he couldn't find the leverage. A shadow fell over him. Kaelen. She didn't laugh. She reached down and lifted the sack with one hand, effortlessly swinging it onto her shoulder. The jeering stopped instantly. "Your bones are hollow," she said, not unkindly, but as a statement of fact. "You are built for a world of feathers and wind." "I'm built for precision," Elias retorted, struggling to catch his breath. "Not hauling rocks." "Then show me precision," Kaelen challenged. She led him to the colony's central heating unit. It was an ancient geothermal pump, rattling and spewing smoke. 2 frostkin warriors were banging on it with rocks, trying to force a valve open. "The heat fails," Kaelen said. "If it stops, the sickness takes the children first." Elias stepped forward. He pushed the warriors aside. He didn't use force, he used leverage. He pulled a multi-tool from his belt, a small whirring device. He bypassed the stuck valve, rerouted the pressure coupling, and cleared the blockage with a sonic pulse. The rattling stopped. A smooth, warm hum filled the cavern. The temperature rose noticeably within seconds. The warriors looked at the machine, then at the small human, eyes wide. Kaelen ran her hand over the warm metal pipes. She looked at Elias. The contempt was gone, replaced by a grudging respect. "You are weak," she admitted, "but you are useful." That night, they sat by the thermal vents he had fixed. Kaelen offered him a strip of dried meat, her own ration. "My people believe the universe is a scale," she said quietly, sharpening her spear. "To take without giving is a sin. You give freely. It frightens them." "It frightens you," Elias corrected, taking the food. Kaelen stopped sharpening. She looked at the bandages on his hands, cuts he'd gotten from the cold, frostbite from the air. She reached out, her clawed finger tracing the line of his jaw, hovering just above the skin. "Why do you stay?" she asked. "You could have stolen a comms unit. You could have run while we slept." "I was a medic for 10 years, Kaelen," Elias said, looking into the fire. "I spent a decade patching people up just so they could go back out and get killed. It felt like putting tape on a sinking ship. But here, I fixed your arm. I fixed the heat. For the first time in my life, I'm actually stopping the bleeding." Kaelen leaned closer, her shoulder brushing his. The contact was electric. "You have the hands of a healer," she murmured, "but the eyes of a warrior who has lost his war." "Maybe I just found a new one," Elias replied. The moment was shattered by the ground shaking. Dust rained from the ceiling. A deep, mechanical thrumming vibrated through the floorboards of the cavern, shaking their bones. Kaelen stood up, her quills flaring. "The Vanguard! They're drilling," Elias realized, the blood draining from his face. "They're not just mining ore anymore. They're looking for the cavern. They're looking for the source." Kaelen looked at Elias, her expression hardening back into stone. "If they take the source, we fade. I have to collapse the tunnels." She looked at him with a terrible resolve. "I have to bury us all." The assault was brutal and efficient. The Vanguard blew the geode open with sonic charges. Mercenaries in thermal power armor poured in, their laser rifles lighting up the dark cavern. "Get the Elders back!" Elias screamed, dragging a wounded Frostkin to cover. He grabbed a fallen debris bar, swinging it to deflect a drone, but the shockwave knocked him flat. Kaelen was a whirlwind of violence. She moved faster than a human could track, her spear piercing armor joints. But for every mercenary she dropped, 2 more took their place. And then came the heavy, a massive exoskeleton suit equipped with a plasma flamethrower. "Burn them out!" The pilot's amplified voice boomed. A stream of blue fire washed over the front line. Kaelen roared and charged the heavy. She jammed her spear into the suit's hydraulic knee, but the pilot backhanded her with a metal fist. She flew backward, smashing into the crystal edge of the nectar pool. The impact shattered her ribs. She coughed up violet blood, struggling to rise. The heavy aimed the flamethrower directly at her. "No!" Elias broke from cover. He didn't have a weapon. He had a theory. He dove, not at the enemy, but at Kaelen. He landed beside her as the heavy charged its weapon. "Elias, run!" Kaelen wheezed, blood bubbling on her lips. "Let me pay the debt." "Shut up," Elias growled. He looked at the nectar pool, then at Kaelen. "Your body can't handle the regeneration speed needed to fight that thing. You'll burn out. Your metabolism is too slow. And you will die." "I'm human." Elias gritted his teeth, his eyes wild. "We're made of spite. And I come from a gravity well twice this heavy." He grabbed a handful of the nectar, but he didn't drink it. He slammed his hand onto Kaelen's open wound, and with his other hand, he gripped the raw, jagged crystal of the pool's edge. "Channel it!" he screamed at her. He made himself the conduit. He invited the energy of the planet to flow through him into her. It wasn't magic. It was agony. Elias screamed as the energy surged. It felt like being electrocuted and flayed simultaneously. His capillaries burst. Blood ran from his nose, his eyes, his ears. The nectar tried to consume him, but his human physiology, dense, adrenaline-pumped, and evolved for endurance, held the line. He acted as a biological filter, stripping the toxicity from the energy and shoving the raw power into Kaelen. Kaelen gasped, her back arching. Her eyes went white. The shattered ribs knitted instantly. Her scales hardened, turning from pale blue to an impenetrable diamond-like black. She stood up, screaming, not in pain, but in power. The heavy fired the plasma stream. Kaelen walked through it. The fire washed over her new armor and did nothing. She reached the suit, ripped the cockpit door off its hinges, and threw the pilot across the cavern. Elias collapsed, his body seizing, smoke rising from his uniform. He watched through a haze of pain as Kaelen dismantled the Vanguard squad with her bare hands. She was a monster. She was magnificent. Silence fell over the cavern. The enemy fled. Kaelen stood amidst the wreckage, the black armor fading back to blue. She turned to where Elias lay crumpled on the ground. He wasn't moving. Pain was the first thing Elias felt. That was good. Dead men don't feel pain. He opened his eyes. He was in the matriarch's dwelling, covered in heavy furs. Kaelen was sitting on the floor beside him, her head resting on his bunk. She was asleep, something he had never seen her do. Her hand was gripping his wrist, tight. He tried to move his arm. It was wrapped in thick bandages, stiff and sore. Kaelen's eyes snapped open. She didn't smile. She let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for days. "You are an idiot," she said softly. "Did we win?" Elias croaked. "The vanguard has left," Kaelen said. "They marked the sector as unstable. They fear the demons of Kryos now." She touched the bandage on his arm gently. "You acted as a filter. The strain should have liquefied your organs. Why did you do it?" Elias looked at the ceiling. "Because the debt is stupid. You don't trade lives, Kaelen. You give them. That's the difference." The matriarch hobbled into the room. She looked at Elias, then at Kaelen. The hostility was gone from her old eyes, replaced by something ancient and solemn. She placed a small, polished stone on Elias's chest, a token of the clan. "You are no longer debt-bound," the matriarch said, her voice raspy but respectful. "The mountain has taken your pain as payment. You are pack." Later, Elias stood at the entrance of the cave, watching the twin suns illuminate the ice fields. He was limping heavily. The damage to his nerves might never fully heal. The cold wind bit at him, but it felt different now, cleaner. Kaelen stepped up beside him. She was taller, stronger, but she didn't look scary anymore. She looked tired, and she looked at him like he was the only source of heat on the planet. "Your people will come back for you," she said. "A rescue signal. I saw the lights in the sky." "I disabled my beacon a week ago," Elias said. Kaelen looked at him, startled, her quills shifting. "Why? You could go back to warmth, to soft food, to safety." Elias looked at the scar on his hand, then at the vast, brutal landscape of Kryos. He looked at Kaelen, whose shoulder brushed against his. He remembered the feeling of lifting that heater, of stopping the bleeding, of finding a purpose that wasn't just war. "I was a medic who just patched people up so they could go back to die," Elias said. "Here, I actually fixed something. I think I'll stay." Kaelen didn't say anything. She just reached out and took his bandaged hand in her clawed one. She squeezed, careful not to use her strength. "Then you will freeze," she said, a hint of a smile touching her lips. "I've got fire," Elias replied, squeezing back. Tradition demanded death. Humanity offered endurance. Some debts are paid in blood. The best ones are paid in love.